This is Beyond the Culture. Let's go. I'm so excited that you took the time to join us on the next episode of Beyond the Culture. This is the show where we embrace change and challenge cultural norms and ideals. I'm your host, Dr. David Walker. You know, each week I attempt to have an insightful conversation with the most engaged minds in the field of education, in sports, in entertainment, in the faith community, and even in business. And I look for people whose work extends beyond cultural norms and ideals. And that's why we call this show Beyond the Culture. Today, I want to go into that faith community and have a conversation about faith, about trusting God, about depending on God, even when you're going through tough times, going through trials and adversity. The one thing that we have that we can always depend on, that is our faith. And I'm going to talk to a gentleman today. His name is Eddie Johnson. And Eddie Johnson is a breakthrough expert. In other words, he helps people to break through adversity and find their purpose. He's the CEO of E4 Inspiring Motivations. He's a motivational speaker. He is the author of Passing the Test of Faith, the rewards of trusting God, and 3 fundamental steps for walking through trials, adversities, and hardships. And he is also known as a servant leader who brings joy and life to situations. And he is my guest today, Mr. Eddie Johnson. Welcome, Eddie.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Walker. I'm really excited to be here with you today and having the opportunity to speak to you as well as your guests and your audience.
Yeah, Eddie, and we're so glad to have you today. And, you know, this conversation about faith is very important,
Yeah.
especially for people who are believers, who trust in God and depend on God. And we all go through, at times, we all go through. And I want to talk to you about faith and you being an expert on helping people through adversity. But before we get into all of that, I'd just like to start with your background. So just tell us, where did you grow up and what was that experience like?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
Most people refer to Jacksonville as Duval, and um, born and raised in in a single family home.
Okay.
My father lived locally there in Jacksonville. Great father, love him to death. But my mom taught me a lot of great things about um, faith
Okay.
as part of my journey. But it was an interesting experience because it was I grew up in a disciplinary household.
Okay.
So mom did not play games at all. So I still flinch from time to time when she asks me a question. So, but yeah, but originally from Jacksonville, Florida.
So you said it was a single family household. And so what was that like? Because I'm sure that's a story within itself. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have a sister, a
Okay.
biological sister, who actually there is there in Tampa.
Okay.
And I have a brother as well who my mother adopted at the age of 7.
Mm.
So even though it was 3 of us at first, she saw a need, and there was a young man who lived there in our apartments who we really enjoyed his presence, and there was an opportunity, and she ended up adopting him and bringing him into our home.
Oh,
So it was an interesting experience because there were many times as where we had some it was some challenging times,
okay.
growing up,
Hmm.
but there were some good times and a lot of lessons learned. And I think that's the part that I gravitate to the most, is those lessons that I learned during that time.
So you said that some of your experiences were very challenging and you learned lessons.
Yeah.
that you have now taken on later into your later life. And so when I introduced you as a breakthrough expert.
Mm-hmm.
The question that I have is, why a breakthrough expert? What did you see that people needed, that they needed a breakthrough adversity expert in their life? What was it that you saw for you to understand that that's what people needed?
Well, I guess, with me being one that has faced adversity
Okay.
many times throughout my life, what I come to realize is that my life, even though I have faced a lot of adversity,
Okay.
I was facing those things in my past to prepare me for my purpose later on in life.
Okay.
And so what I found is that a lot of people are looking for ways to overcome obstacles in their life. And because I've been fortunate enough to be able to overcome some of the things that I faced,
Mm-hmm.
it became obvious to me that that was part of my purpose. And I was actually being molded to be able to help other people
Okay.
by demonstrating and sharing with them my experience and some of the lessons that I've learned. So that in and of itself, we're all going to face adversity. It's never, none of us are exempt from it. I wish we were, but unfortunately we're not. But I tell people all the time is that if we take the time to reflect back over our past experiences, what we will find is we will find many great lessons that were there. And those lessons many times were preparing us for lessons that were to come later on in life. You had asked me about, coming up. One of the lessons that I learned, my mother once told me this, and this kind of really builds up to the whole big picture of my life. Is I remember facing one of the my very first faith experience,
Okay.
and I sat down with my mother, and my mother said, "Son, do you know what faith is?" You say, if you trust and believe God, and believe that you can do anything. And she said, "Son, your faith is being tested right now.
Mm.
So look at it this way. You got to pass this test. So you're in the ninth grade right now. Imagine if you failed this test right now and you have to go back to the seventh grade and do the seventh and eighth grade over again. Would you want to do it?" And I remember saying no. And she said, "So you got to pass this test." So what I realized is that there were many lessons there. And that's one lesson that I will never forget because that was a foundation defining moment in my life.
We all learn from our experiences. And, you said you used the term, defining moment. And we all know that when a defining moment comes, either you define the moment or the moment is going to define you.
Right.
And so we learn from our experiences, but so your experiences through life have made you into a motivational speaker. You have you're the CEO of a company, E4 Inspiring Motivations. Just talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to go into talking about you as a motivational speaker.
Okay, great. So E4 Inspiring Motivations is a personal and professional development company that specializes in helping people to find purpose,
Okay.
which leads to continue and meaningful success.
Mm-hmm.
But also, we specialize and help people to overcome the adversities that we will face so
Okay.
that we can be more productive in our day-to-day life, whether it's our professional life or in our professional life.
So you help people, um, like you say, to get past adversity,
Mm-hmm.
and so you're a motivational speaker.
Yes.
You take the stage. You're trying to speak from the stage. What caused you to go into motivational speaker? Well, what was the impetus for it?
Well, great question. Number one, I never imagined myself doing what I'm doing today.
Okay.
And what really kind of got me to that point was 3 years ago, actually 2017, 3 years ago, I was downsized
Oh,
from my career. in the month I was celebrating 20 years, I was downsized.
Okay.
And after going through that experience and just sitting down and doing some reflection is when I started just thinking back. And all of a sudden, I ended up getting a call several days later from a good friend and fraternity brother. And he calls me and says, "Hey, man, I would like to talk to you. I heard you lost your job. Sorry to hear that happened to you." He says, "But me and several guys are about to go through this process of um, talking about legacy and
Mm-hmm.
purpose. I think it'll be a great opportunity for you." And I went through that process. And as I went through that process, I started to see some common themes. And what I realized is that I had a voice
Okay.
and I needed to use that voice in order for me to fulfill my purpose. And also I started speaking from that point, and it's been an interesting journey
Mm-hmm.
in and of itself. Again, my background is in credit management and accounting. I have a
Okay.
accounting degree from Florida State University. So speaking, that was not something I ever signed up for,
Mm-hmm.
but I ended up in this place and I love doing it. So I get the opportunity to inspire other people, which is actually part of my purpose. So it's really a great a joy of mine to be able to stand in front of someone and be able to share something that's useful that they can use in their day-to-day life immediately from that point forward.
I find that you cannot be a great motivational speaker and at least speak on the subject of faith if you have not had your own experiences.
Yes.
Now, you just talked about being downsized and losing a job and being left unemployed, and obviously through your faith, you've maneuvered and you've readjusted, and with the help of the Lord, you're back on your feet.
Yes.
But as I was preparing for this interview, I was on your website and I saw a quote by you. And the quote said, "Put your faith in action
Hmm.
and watch what God does with it." And I bring that quote up because I also discovered that you had a faith experience in your family.
Mm-hmm.
You had a young son who was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor.
Yeah.
And so when I saw the quote, "Put your faith in action and watch what God does with it," and then hearing the story about, your son, I said, I have to have Eddie to tell us how he allowed his faith in God to be there for him as he was going through that moment with the sickness of his son. Talk about
Mm-hmm.
that for us.
Sure. So yeah, this is where this is the whole meat and potatoes piece right here, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
but basically, back in 2003,
Mm-hmm.
my firstborn son, Kendall, he was 3 years old, and he was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. And I remember going into the emergency room that day, and we're sitting there, and the doctor comes in after doing a CAT scan, and he says, "Mom, Dad, we have something very serious.
Mm-hmm.
Your son has an inoperable inoperable tumor, and the tumor is lodged in his brainstem."
Wow.
And when he said that, I remember immediately I tuned him out
Okay.
and I instantly went into prayer. And he could tell that I wasn't listening. And I remember him saying to me, "Dad, this is very serious." And I just looked at him and I said, "I know."
Mm.
And I said from that moment, after he left, and I watched my wife at the time and my son, I'm looking at him. I remember walking outside, and it was very late. It was maybe after 12 o'clock that particular night. And I just sat there and I just said, "God, I can't even imagine where to begin with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to trust you with every fiber of my body.
Yes.
And I need you to do something for me on this." Well, I trusted God through that whole experience. I relied on my faith. And yeah, there were moments, I would have my weak times and being human.
Mm-hmm.
And what was interesting about that whole piece of being human is God was speaking to me. And
Right.
I ended up noticing his voice.
Okay.
And what would happen is every time I would have a weak moment, which very few people saw, I would be in my car and a song would come on the radio. And the song was by Yolanda Adams. This
Okay.
battle is not yours.
Wow.
And after about 3 or 4 times, that's when I realized this song shows up every time I am literally about to break.
Mm.
And that's when I realized that God was talking to me. So we go through this process with my son, and people started to come up and ask me the question, Eddie, where did you get faith to trust God that way? I
Mm.
don't think I could have trusted God with something so big. Um, it just baffles me that you can trust God with something so big. So, Dr. Walker, after hearing this multiple times, I started wondering myself, yeah, where did I get faith to trust God with something like this?
Mm.
So it caused me to sit down and I started to reflect and go back over my past mountain experiences.
Okay.
Those mountain experiences are those challenges that have been in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And what I ended up doing is I ended up back when I was in the ninth grade,
Okay.
where I had my very first faith experience. Prior to the ninth grade, I was what I call a super athlete, right?
Okay.
I was in junior high school. Back then we call it junior high school, because that was eighth grade, ninth grade.
Right. Right.
And I had eighth grade, I had broken a school record in a basketball game, scored 41 out of 45 points, won the game 45-43. Man, I was on my way, right?
Wow.
Ninth grade year, I'm the quarterback of the football team, most outstanding offensive back, and the sky's the limit. I'm the MVP of the basketball team. And back then, very few ninth graders were able to dunk a ball.
Mm-hmm.
So I was one of those that could. In
Okay.
this one particular game, I had two dunks in the game.
Okay.
We're less than 2 minutes left, and I'm going down for the third dunk, and someone tried to defend me. And as he did, he knocked me off balance, and I came down. I tried to catch myself, and as I came down to catch myself, I remember just bouncing off the ground.
Okay.
Looked at my hand and noticed that my thumb was bent all the way back to my wrist.
Mm.
I had dislocated my thumb, had to have surgery, pins put in, broke my finger, sprained my wrist, sprained my knee, all in one blow.
Mm.
And that in and of itself felt like all my dreams and aspirations was wiped away from that one injury. So track is coming up. I did the high jump, and man, I just knew I was going to win that award. The problem was I was told I shouldn't jump.
Okay.
I was told I shouldn't jump because my hand had not healed from the surgery. So they would put a football pad around my hand and a pillow and wrap it around my hand. So can you imagine trying to do a high jump back then, right? And
Uh-huh.
you're jumping with this big old thing on and you holding your hand up in the air.
Uh-huh.
But I had no confidence at
Okay.
all. So I could jump no more than 5'3", 5'4". And I remember going to my athletic director. I
Mm-hmm.
remember saying, Coach Gatto, am I going to win Athlete of the Year? And he says, Eddie, there are other great athletes in the school. You're going to have to do something in track if you're going to win this award. And I'm like, how in the world this going to happen?
Okay.
Well, this kind of takes us back to that experience that I told you with my mother. I went down and sat down and said, listen, I'm having a hard time, and I'm crying because the one biggest thing that I always wanted was that award.
Okay.
And I said, I'm not going to win this award. And that was when my mother said, son, if you trust God and you believe in God and you believe that you can, and you have that faith, you can do anything. And she gave me some scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
So I read these scriptures every day for a week.
Okay.
I said, I have nothing to lose. I got to try this. She said this was a test. I got to try this and I got to pass this test. So I go to the district meet, and the district meet, the top 4 moves on to the championship. Before I knew it, I had been cleared 5'4", 5'6", 5'8", 5'10", 6 feet. Now I'm going for the district record at 6'2".
Wow.
And I hit the bar, and I ended up scratching my arm up real bad. I got a 5.5-inch scar right here where my arm came across the bar and it cut it. So now I look like MASH. I'm wrapped up, bandaged here, hand and everything.
Uh-huh.
I took second place. The following week, I ended up winning the championship.
Okay.
Here was the deal. That experience in the 9th grade had to happen in my life.
Okay.
I didn't realize it then, but that had to happen in my life to prepare me for what was coming 17 years later
Wow.
with my son.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, that day that I cleared 5'6", 5'8", 5'10", I believe that my faith was increasing with every jump I took.
Mm.
So my whole faith journey, that's the story of my journey, is literally going through that biggest challenge in my life with my son,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to tie it back to that first faith experience. And that's when life started to make sense to me.
Right.
About adversity and why I had experienced so many different things and they never destroyed me. But here's the thing, God always rewarded me because of the faith.
Mm.
And that's the key, is that he wants us to trust him enough because he wants to deliver on his promise.
Right.
So that's what it's really all about, is being able to trust him regardless of what it is that we're facing. How bad it may look, horrible and everything else, but he just wants us to trust him because he has a reward for us that we can't even think about.
And how did the story process with your son?
So as it turned out, Kendall was 3 when he was diagnosed.
Okay.
And he passed away 1 month before turning 4.
Okay.
Now, here was the deal too. Kendall's birthday is in May. My
Okay.
birthday is in May. His
Okay.
birthday is 1 day after mine,
Okay.
right? So back to that reward part.
Mm-hmm.
At the time of Kendall's diagnosis, it was the last Christmas we had with him.
Okay.
My wife and I, at the time, we found out we were expecting. And what was interesting about this, that was the one time I kind of got really rebellious, because I was like, all right, God, what, expecting? What, I'm not looking for no replacement. Are you trying to prepare me for this? So I remember kind of just for a couple days, I was just hard.
Mm.
And I had to come back to my senses. I got to trust God with this journey.
Sure.
So here was the deal. Sat down, we told Kendall, said, hey man, you're going to be a big brother. What do you want, a boy or girl? And we show him the sonogram. He looks at it, he says, I don't see a baby. We said, well, okay, you want a boy or girl? So he falls asleep that night with the picture in his hand. I put it on the nightstand. He wakes up the next morning, he says, hey, where's the picture of my baby?
Okay.
That's my baby in my picture. So I gave it to him and I said, you want a boy or girl? He says, I want 2 babies. Can't have 2, man. It's only one. His response, Dr. Walker, was, I want 2. And he would always run away. So this happened for a month.
Okay.
After that, he finally said he wanted a girl baby. Here was the deal. A week after Kendall passed, that's when we found out we was having a girl.
Okay.
Man, God had answered prayers. So my daughter is now, fast forward, 7 months old, and we find out we're expecting again.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, this is a little much. We're still grieving, the whole nine, this excitement. And I remember my wife going to get a sonogram, and I was traveling on business. It was a Monday. And she calls me and she's laughing and she's crying, laughing and she's crying. And I'm like, what is going on? She says, The nurse asked me, how would I feel if we had two babies? The exact same thing Kendall had said.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, we got Kennedy. We're going to have another one. She says, no, we're having twins. And it was in that moment that I realized that God was rewarding us
Mm.
because of my faith.
Wow.
So yeah, God is a true rewarder.
Yes, he is. And you know, I appreciate you for telling the story as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes faith for some people means that the outcome is going to be exactly what they want.
Yeah.
And sometimes having faith and trusting in God does not always mean it's going to be as you want. We know God is sovereign and God is divine. But I'm so thankful to you for being honest and open, and telling the story about your son, but yet you still held on to your faith. And I think that's I won't say it's the greater part, but that's a part of the process too, holding on to your faith um, in the midst of the results as is.
Yeah. You just said something that's very interesting because I actually use this example when I'm talking about my book and the 4 different steps
Okay.
that I emphasize in the book. And that thing is this: Hebrews 11:1 says, faith is a substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Yes.
Now, if that scripture said faith is a substance of things wished for,
Mm,
it changes the whole definition of the word faith,
absolutely.
because a wish is what we want. You just
Mm-hmm.
said it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it says hope, and hope means to expect God to do something.
Right.
Even when we don't know what it is he's going to do, we're expecting him to do something. And what he's going to do is going to be for our good and
Mm,
according to his will.
that's
Right?
right.
So, to your point, yes, many times we want things our way, but what it boils down to is we got to expect him to do something
Right.
on our behalf.
Mm-hmm.
But the only way we can get there and get there to that point is that we got to have a relationship with him
Right. That's
to be
right.
able to trust him and expect him to do something, right?
Yes.
So that's the key, is the relationship. Because here's the deal: we trust those we have a relationship with.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. You mentioned your book, and I just want to give the title of it. Um, it's called Passing the Test of Faith: The Rewards for Trusting God
Mm-hmm.
and 3 Fundamental Steps for Walking Through Trials, Adversities, and Hardships. So just talk about the book a little bit. And if you want to share 1 or 2 steps to help people to get through their trials, adversities, and hardship, I'm sure they'll appreciate it.
Absolutely. So here's the book, Passing the Test of Faith. Hopefully my glare is kind of messing it up there. But what's interesting about this book is God told me to write this book, and I tried to run from this experience.
Okay.
And I literally was like, me? I'm the last person to write a book. I barely read books. I'm a numbers guy, right?
Sure, sure.
And but that ember slowly became a flame.
Okay.
And it got to the point as to where I started to put words to paper after accumulating all of these notes. I had stickies and napkins and all kind of stuff written everywhere. But basically I provide 3 steps, fundamental steps, along with faith being the very first thing,
Okay.
is that we got to have faith and trust God with whatever it is that we're facing.
Mm-hmm.
But the second key piece of this is we have to start the journey with the right attitude.
Okay.
And the reason being, it's a hard thing to do, but the reason being, our attitude is the thing that sets the tone for the journey that we're about to go on.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
Mm-hmm.
having that right attitude is very key. The second step is this: we got to be patient.
Okay.
We don't know how long the journey is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
The journey might be 3 weeks. It might be 3 months. It might be 3 years. But we have to be patient. And that's even harder to be patient because we live in a fast-paced environment. Anytime we're facing something, guess what? We don't want to be in it anyway. So we're trying to hurry up and get out of it.
Absolutely.
But what happens is when we try to rush our way through, we tend to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And if things aren't going our way, a lot of times we start to manipulate the situation.
Absolutely.
Only to find ourselves still in the situation longer. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the second piece. And then the last and final piece is we have to be listening to hear God's voice.
Wow.
For his direction, for how we should navigate and how we should go from one day to the next day. And the only way that we can listen is we got to be still and be quiet. Listen. Many times when we're facing adversity, or bottom line, when we pray, most of us, including me, will say everything, throw up all these petitions, say amen, get up and go.
Uh-huh.
We hadn't took the time to be patient and just listen to what he has to say.
Yes.
We think he's going to tell us everything we need to hear amongst all the stuff that's going on around us, and we can't hear him.
Mm-hmm.
We miss it. So we have to be still. We have to be quiet in order to hear his voice speaking to us, to navigate how we should handle and where we should go and whom we should talk to, even still. So those are the 3 steps. But really it's 4 steps because it starts with faith.
Faith, right.
But those are the key steps there.
You know, you have been an inspiration to so many people through your own life experience, but I just want to ask you, can you tell me or name 3 people that have been most influential to you and why?
Wow. 3 that's been most influential to me and why. 1, I would say my mother.
Okay.
And I say that because I remember as a kid and even as an adult, seeing her experience various things.
Okay.
But more so as a child. I remember, once hearing my mother in the middle of the night crying.
Okay.
And she was praying, right? And I actually mentioned this in the book. I said, I don't know why she was crying in that prayer. And I said, I only can imagine that maybe she was crying because she was hungry, because she was making sacrifices, right? So, but she has been truly, I would probably say, the number 1 most influential person.
Okay.
Because I've seen her worship. And because I witnessed her worshiping, it put me in a position to understand the value of worship.
Okay.
Second, I would say my son Kendall, believe it or not.
Okay.
And I say that even though he was 3 years old, he touched the hearts of so many people. And, for people to literally come up and say, I remember one lady said, I pray, but I would never get on my knees.
Okay.
But when Kendall got sick, I started to get on my knees and pray.
Wow.
And I was like, man. But here is the other part too. He had his own relationship with God.
Sure.
And I know that. And I know that because, and I share this as well in the book, I believe when we were having prayer visuals and at the house, or we were having time together and maybe his mom was feeling heavy or I was feeling heavy, that he was praying for us, even at 3. I'll tell you a short story. I remember the last Christmas we had, and I got ready to bless dinner, Christmas dinner. And he stopped me and he said, let me do it. I was like, okay, sure. Now, he said the Lord's Prayer from beginning to end with us repeating after him. and he didn't miss a word. Now, there are some adults who struggle with saying the Lord's Prayer from beginning to end. And especially if you're going to let somebody repeat after you, that means you got to pause. You can't just keep going through, right? But
Right.
he did it from beginning to end. What was interesting about that, I would say the Lord's Prayer to him
Mm-hmm.
every morning that I took him to daycare.
Okay.
And he would repeat after me, but I never asked him to say it. And that was his first time saying it. So he inspired me,
Okay.
and I saw the resilience that he had, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's the second. The third, I would say I've had some great pastors in my past
Okay.
that I've had good relationships. I've always had good relationships with my pastors.
Okay.
It's kind of one of those things. You're gonna be my pastor. I don't care how big the church is. I need to be able to pick up the phone and call you directly, right?
Sure.
So I've had some good pastors in my past, but one in particular, I will say this: my roommate from college. His name is Eddie. Also, I'm Eddie IE. He is Eddie Y. And we're roommates in college, but he's a AME pastor down in South Florida. But I'll tell you, going through this whole experience with Kendall, he
Okay.
was there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even afterwards, he was there. Matter of fact, he had just moved here to Atlanta for seminary
Okay.
at the time. So what great timing, right? But
Mm-hmm.
he has always been a good friend, and someone I can rely on, and when I need it the most. So I would say those are the three.
Those are three good ones. Those are three good ones. As we bring this conversation to a close, and it's been a outstanding conversations, very inspirational and motivational. Um, I want to ask you, what inspirational message can you leave with this audience?
Yeah, I would say that we're all going to face challenges in our life.
Okay.
They come in various sizes, just like mountains. They come
Mm-hmm.
in various sizes, some small, some medium, some large. But what I would tell you, regardless of the size of the mountain is not there to harm you or to tear you down,
Mm,
but it's there to strengthen you and prepare you for the next mountain that's ahead.
right.
And if we look back over those experiences that we've already faced, all those mountains that we've already climbed and we've already defeated, what
Mm-hmm.
will happen is we will learn something there.
Okay.
And those are the things we got to remember is the mountains that we've already overcome,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because it will give us the strength to deal with the mountain that we're facing currently right now.
Right.
So whatever it is that you're facing, just know it's not there to harm you. But more than anything else, when we're facing a mountain, we're facing adversity, the first thing we have to do is find God first
Mm,
and find a blessing. And I don't care how big the blessing is. The analogy I like to use is this: if you're in the gym and you're lifting 25 pounds on the left side,
mm-hmm.
and you don't have anything on the right side, it's going to be off.
Right.
Let's
Right.
imagine that 25 pounds is that adversity that you're dealing with. It's hard to find a 25-pound blessing to offset that. So you got to find a small blessing. That blessing may be worth 2.5 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
The next blessing may be worth 5 pounds. The next blessing may be worth 10 pounds. And so on and so forth. You'll eventually get to 25.
Sure.
But it's the small blessings that leads us to the bigger blessings.
Right.
So if I had to leave anything, it would be that.
Well, Eddie, I want to thank you for those words of inspiration. You truly have been a great guest. You on the show. And as I always say to all of my guests who come on, you have gone beyond the culture. And we are truly grateful for you being on the show. But before you go, how can my listeners connect with you online on social media?
Yeah, so I'm actually, as far as a website, you can go to eddieLjohnson.com,
Mm-hmm.
eddieLjohnson.com. And I am on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. You can find me at Eddie L. Johnson E4 on all social media outlets.
Well, once again, Eddie, we thank you for being on the show today. And we are truly grateful for your presence with us. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, you take care.
Hey, you do the same. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Now, if you want to continue to hear inspiring interviews like the one you heard today, I want you to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. Also, rate the show and please leave a comment. I would also love it if you would share this podcast with your friends to let them know that we're on. Finally, please go to our website at www.beyondtheculturepodcast.com, or you can email me at beyondtheculturepodcast@gmail.com. On the website, you can subscribe to the show and connect with me by leaving your email address. I'd love to hear from you. This is your host, Dr. David Walker, and we'll talk again on Beyond the Culture. Take care.